Ethan Caldwell was not your average billionaire. He wasn't born into money or privilege. Instead, he clawed his way to the top with sheer determination and a lot of hard work. Growing up in a small town in the Midwest, Ethan knew what it meant to struggle. His family didn't have much. His dad worked long hours at a factory, and his mom stretched every penny to make ends meet. But despite their hardships, Ethan had big dreams. From an early age, he wanted more not just for himself, but for his family too. He was smart, ambitious, and driven. In high school, he earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university, something that felt like a golden ticket out of his humble life. But along with opportunity came sacrifice. Before leaving for college, Ethan fell in love with a girl from his neighborhood. She was kind, funny, and shared his vision of building a better future. They were young, hopeful, and deeply in love. Everything seemed perfect until one day, she dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant with triplets. The news hit Ethan like a ton of bricks. At 18 years old, he wasn't ready to be a father. The thought of raising 3 kids while trying to chase his dreams felt impossible. So, after days of sleepless nights and endless arguments, Ethan made the hardest decision of his life. He left. He convinced himself it was for the best. He told her he couldn't give her the life she deserved and promised to send help whenever he could. But as time went on, guilt gnawed at him. Letters from her piled up unread, calls went unanswered, and eventually she stopped reaching out altogether. Ethan buried those memories deep inside, focusing all his energy on climbing the ladder of success. Years passed, and Ethan became a household name. His tech company revolutionized industries, earning him billions. Yet, no matter how many accolades he received or how luxurious his lifestyle became, there was always a void, a nagging feeling that something was missing. Late at night, when the world was quiet, he'd think about the girl he left behind and wonder what happened to her. And their babies. Did they hate him? Were they okay? These questions haunted him, but he never acted on them. Instead, he poured his guilt into work, convincing himself that success would somehow fill the emptiness. Then, one day, everything changed. Ethan decided to open an orphanage. Not because he wanted publicity or tax breaks, but because he genuinely wanted to give back. Deep down, he hoped it might ease some of the guilt he carried. He named it Harbor House, a place where children without families could find safety, love, and support. As construction finished and the grand opening approached, Ethan felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. This project was personal. It was his chance to right some of the wrongs from his past, even if indirectly. On the day of the opening, Harbor House buzzed with activity. Reporters snapped photos, donors mingled, and volunteers scurried around making final preparations. Ethan stood near the entrance, dressed in a sharp suit, shaking hands and smiling for the cameras. Inside, though, he was nervous. What if this didn't work? What if he failed these kids the same way he'd failed so many others? As the first group of children arrived, Ethan's heart skipped a beat. There were toddlers clinging to stuffed animals, teenagers with guarded expressions, and siblings holding on to each other tightly. Among them, 3 faces stood out immediately. They looked eerily familiar to familiar. 3 identical teenagers walked in together, chatting animatedly. One cracked a joke, and the other 2 burst into laughter. Their resemblance to Ethan was uncanny, the same piercing blue eyes, the same confident posture, the same mischievous grins. For a moment, Ethan froze. His mind raced with possibilities, none of which made sense. Could it really be them? Was fate playing some cruel trick on him? A social worker approached him, introducing the trio as the Thompson triplets, Lucas, Noah, and Mia. She explained they were siblings searching for their biological father after spending years in foster care. Ethan's stomach churned. It couldn't be true, could it? As he shook their hands, Ethan noticed little details that confirmed his worst fears or maybe his greatest hopes. The way Lucas tilted his head when thinking, the quiet intensity. In Noah's gaze, the artistic flair in Mia's hand gestures, it was like looking into a mirror. Panic gripped him. How could he face them? What would they think if they knew who he really was? For now, Ethan kept his composure, forcing a smile and welcoming them to Harbor House. But inside, his mind was spinning with questions. Who were these kids? And why did they look exactly like him? That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Memories of the past flooded back, the girl he loved, the letters he ignored, the promises he broke. Guilt weighed heavily on him as he stared at the ceiling, wondering how fate had brought these 3 teenagers into his life. Tomorrow, he vowed, he would get answers. Whether they liked it or not, Ethan Caldwell was determined to uncover the truth and possibly change all their lives forever. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a heavy heart. Sleep had been impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, the triplets. Those 3 teenagers who looked so much like him, it was almost eerie. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were connected to him in ways he didn't fully understand yet. But how could he be sure? What if he was wrong? The thought of jumping to conclusions terrified him. Still, Ethan knew sitting around wasn't an option. He needed answers, and fast. That's when he came up with a plan. Under the pretense of ensuring proper medical records for every child. At Harbor House, Ethan arranged for discreet DNA tests. It was risky. What if the results came back negative? Or worse, what if they confirmed his worst fear? Either way, he couldn't ignore the possibility anymore. For now, though, he decided to play it cool. If these kids really were his, he wanted to get to know them first before dropping a bombshell like that on them. Over the next few days, Ethan made it a point to spend as much time as possible with the triplets. They weren't hard to find, they stuck together like glue, always talking, laughing, or teasing each other. Each sibling had a distinct personality, but they shared one thing in common, a quiet longing for something more. Ethan noticed it in the way they looked around Harbor House, taking everything in but never fully relaxing. They carried themselves like kids who'd been let down too many times to trust easily. Lucas, the oldest of the 3, seemed to take charge naturally. He was confident, outspoken, and fiercely protective of his siblings. Whenever someone tried to talk to Noah or Mia, Lucas would step in, making sure they were okay. At first, Ethan found this endearing, but as he got to know Lucas better, he realized there was a layer of anger beneath the surface. Anger directed at whoever had abandoned them. Ethan felt a pang of guilt every time Lucas shot him a skeptical glance. Noah, on the other hand, was quieter. He didn't say much, but when he did, his words carried weight. Ethan noticed how observant Noah was. He seemed to pick up on things others missed. During group activities at Harbor House, Noah would sit back and watch, analyzing everyone's behavior. When Ethan asked him about it once, Noah shrugged and said, "You learn to read people when you don't have anyone else looking out for you." The comment hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Clearly, these kids had been through more than he could imagine. Then there was Mia, the youngest of the trio. She was creative, expressive, and full of energy. Unlike her brothers, Mia wore her emotions on her sleeve. She loved art and spent hours sketching in a worn-out notebook she carried everywhere. One afternoon, Ethan found her sitting by the fountain outside Harbor House, drawing furiously. Curious, he sat down beside her and asked what she was working on. Without looking up, Mia muttered, "It's nothing special." But when Ethan pressed her, she reluctantly showed him the page. It was a breathtakingly detailed drawing of the 3 siblings standing together, holding hands. In the background, Ethan noticed a faint outline of a figure watching them from afar. When he pointed it out, Mia blushed and quickly flipped the page. I guess I wanted to imagine what it might feel like to have a dad," she admitted softly. That moment stayed with Ethan long after Mia walked away. Her words echoed in his mind. Asterisk. What it might feel like to have a dad. Wasn't that exactly what he'd denied them all those years ago? The guilt he'd been carrying since meeting them grew heavier with each passing day. Yet, despite everything, Ethan couldn't help but admire their resilience. These kids had been through hell, yet they still managed to smile, laugh, and support each other. They reminded him of himself, determined to rise above circumstances beyond their control. Finally, the day came when the DNA test results arrived. Ethan locked himself in his office, staring at the envelope on his desk. His hands trembled as he opened it, scanning the report inside. There it was in black and white. The triplets were his biological children. The room spun as the reality sank in. 18 years of their lives gone. Birthdays, school plays, family dinners all missed because of his selfishness. Ethan buried his face in his hands, letting the tears flow freely. How could he have done this? How could he fix it? When he finally pulled himself together, Ethan realized he had two choices: walk away or step up. Walking away would be easy. He could pretend the results were wrong, go back to his old life, and leave the triplets to fend for themselves. But stepping up? That meant facing the truth, owning his mistakes, and doing whatever it took to make amends. It wouldn't be easy, in fact. It might be the hardest thing he'd ever done, but deep down, Ethan knew it was the right thing to do. He spent the rest of the evening rehearsing what he would say to them. How do you tell 3 teenagers that you're their father after nearly 2 decades of absence? There was no perfect way to break the news, but Ethan vowed to be honest. No excuses, no lies, just the truth. As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Ethan braced himself for the conversation ahead. Tomorrow he would change their lives and his own forever. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a knot in his stomach. He had spent hours rehearsing what he would say to the triplets, but no amount of preparation could calm the storm inside him. This was at the moment where he would either rebuild bridges or burn them completely. The weight of the truth pressed down on him, and for a fleeting second, he considered delaying the conversation. But deep down, he knew he couldn't keep running from his past. It was time to face it head on. Ethan waited until after breakfast to approach them. He found the trio sitting together under a tree outside Harbor House, their usual spot. Lucas was leaning against the trunk, scrolling through his phone while keeping an eye on his siblings. Noah was sketching something in a small notebook, his brow furrowed in concentration, and Mia was humming softly as she flipped through her art pad. They looked peaceful, almost happy, and Ethan felt a pang of guilt knowing that he was about to shatter that peace. "Hey," Ethan said, his voice softer than he intended. All 3 heads turned toward him, their expressions curious but guarded. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" Lucas narrowed his eyes slightly, clearly suspicious. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone sharp. "It's important," Ethan replied, trying to sound calm despite the nerves bubbling inside him. After a brief pause, the triplets exchanged glances before standing up and following him into the library, a quiet room filled with books and cozy chairs. Ethan closed the door behind them, sealing off the world outside. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The air was thick with tension. Ethan took a deep breath and began. "I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear me out before you say anything, okay?" He looked at each of them, searching for some sign of understanding. They nodded hesitantly, though Lucas still looked skeptical. Ethan hesitated, rubbing his hands together nervously. "I've been doing some digging recently. about your background. And, well, I discovered something that changes everything." He paused again, struggling to find the right words. "You guys are my biological children." Silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. For a moment, Ethan thought he might suffocate under the weight of it. Then chaos erupted. "What?" Lucas snapped, jumping to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "Are you serious right now? You just show up here acting all nice, and now you're telling us this? Who even are you?" Noah stayed seated, his jaw clenched tightly as he processed the information. Mia, however, looked stunned, her wide eyes darting between Ethan and her brothers. She clutched her sketchbook to her chest like a shield. "I know this is a lot to take in," Ethan said quickly, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Believe me, I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't even know about you until recently. But now that I do, I owe you the truth." "The truth?" Lucas shot back, his voice rising. "The truth is you abandoned us. You left our mom when she needed you most. Do you have any idea what that did to her?" "To us?" Ethan flinched at the accusation. I made a mistake, a huge one. I was young, scared, and selfish. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing by leaving, but I see now how wrong was. I can't change the past, but I want to make things right. If you'll let me." Mia finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Why should we believe you? How do we know you won't leave again?" Her question hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He sat down heavily in one of the chairs, running a hand over his face. "I don't expect you to trust me right away. Honestly, I wouldn't trust me either if I were in your shoes. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to leave." For a long moment, no one said anything. The only sound was the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Finally, Noah broke the silence. "If you really mean that, prove it. Show us you're different from the guy who walked out on Mom." Ethan nodded slowly. "Fair enough. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. But first, I need to know what happened to your mom. Where is she?" The room grew eerily quiet. Mia hugged her sketchbook tighter, and Lucas avoided Ethan's gaze altogether. It was Noah who answered, his voice low and steady. "She died 5 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver." Ethan felt like the floor had been ripped out from under him. He slumped forward, his elbows resting on his knees as he tried to process the news. The woman he once loved, the mother of his children, was gone, and he hadn't even known. Guilt washed over him in waves, threatening to drown him. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I should have been there. For her. For all of you." Lucas scoffed bitterly. "Yeah, you should have. But you weren't. So why start now?" "Because I messed up," Ethan shouted, surprising even himself. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay composed. "I messed up big time, and I hate myself for it, but I can't fix the past. All I can do is try to be better moving forward. Please, give me a chance to make things right." Again, silence filled the room. This time, it felt heavier, more uncertain. Ethan braced himself for rejection, fully expecting Lucas to kick him out or Mia to burst into tears. Instead, Mia surprised him by speaking up. "We've been on our own for a long time," she said quietly. "Ever since Mom died, it's just been us. We've learned to take care of each other because no one else would. But sometimes—" Her voice cracked and she glanced at her brothers before continuing. "Sometimes it gets lonely. Having someone who actually cares, maybe that wouldn't be so bad." Lucas glared at her, clearly conflicted. "Mia, you can't seriously think—" "I'm not saying we forgive him," Mia interrupted firmly. "But maybe we could try. Just for a little while." Ethan looked at her, gratitude swelling in his chest. He turned to Noah, who gave a reluctant nod. Finally, his gaze landed on Lucas, who crossed his arms and sighed deeply. "Fine," Lucas muttered. "We'll give you a shot. But if you screw this up, if you hurt us again, we're done." "Got it?" Ethan nodded earnestly. "Got it." Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into building a relationship with his children. He attended parent-teacher conferences, helped Mia prepare for an upcoming art competition, and even joined Lucas and Noah in pickup basketball games at the local park. At first, the interactions were awkward and strained, but slowly they began to loosen up around him. Lucas still kept his guard up, firing off biting comments whenever Ethan slipped up. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when Ethan caught glimpses of the bond they could have. One evening, Ethan brought pizza to Harbor House and invited the triplets to hang out in the rec room. They played board games and laughed until their sides hurt, and for the first time, Ethan felt like he was truly part of their world. As they cleaned up afterward, Mia handed him a drawing she'd made earlier that day. It was a picture of the four of them together, smiling and holding hands. In the corner, she'd written, "Asterisk. Maybe families aren't perfect, but maybe they don't have to be." Asterisk. Ethan stared at the drawing, his throat tightening with emotion. "Thank you," he said softly. "This means more than you know." Mia smiled shyly. "Just don't mess it up, okay?" "I won't," Ethan promised. And for the first time in years, he believed it. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan found himself growing closer to the triplets. Each day brought new challenges and small victories, but he could feel the walls between them slowly crumbling. Still, there were moments when he wondered if he was truly making progress or just fooling himself. Lucas, in particular, remained a tough nut to crack. While Noah and Mia had started opening up more, Lucas kept his distance, testing Ethan at every turn. Ethan understood it wasn't easy for any of them to trust him after everything they'd been through, but it didn't make the rejection sting any less. One afternoon, while going through some old files related to Harbor House, Ethan stumbled upon something that stopped him cold. It was a faded newspaper clipping tucked inside a folder labeled Donor Profiles. The headline read, Asterisk, Local Heroine Remembered. Mother of triplets dies in tragic accident. Below it was a photo of a woman Ethan hadn't seen in nearly 2 decades, their mother. She looked radiant in the picture, smiling warmly as she held her 3 young children close. Ethan's hands shook as he read the article, which detailed how she had worked tirelessly to provide for her kids despite overwhelming odds. According to the report, she died 5 years ago when a drunk driver ran a red light, leaving the triplets orphaned and forced into foster care. Ethan sank into his chair, overwhelmed by grief and guilt. He hadn't known about her death, hadn't even tried to find out what happened to her after he left. Now, reading about the life she built without him, he felt like the lowest person alive. She had raised their children alone, working multiple jobs and sacrificing everything to give them a better future. And where had he been? Off chasing success, building an empire, pretending his past didn't exist. He couldn't undo what he'd done, but he could honor her memory. That thought sparked an idea, one that might help him connect with the triplets on a deeper level while keeping her legacy alive. Ethan decided to organize a memorial service for their mom at Harbor House. He wanted it to be a celebration of her life, a way for everyone who knew her to come together and share stories about the incredible woman she was. More importantly, he hoped it would bring closure not just for the triplets, but for himself too. When Ethan told the triplets about his plan, their reactions were mixed. Mia seemed touched by the gesture, hugging him tightly and thanking him for thinking of their mom. Noah nodded approvingly, saying it sounded like a good way to remember her. But Lucas? Lucas exploded. "You think throwing some fancy party is gonna fix everything?" He snapped, pacing back and forth in frustration. "You don't get it. You weren't there when she needed you. You didn't see how hard she worked, how tired she always was. You have no idea what we went through." Ethan let him vent, knowing he deserved every word. When Lucas finally ran out of steam, Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're right," he admitted. "I wasn't there, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I'm here now, and I want to do this for your mom, for all of you. I can't change the past, but maybe we can honor her together." Lucas hesitated, his anger wavering. After a long pause, he muttered, "Fine, do whatever you want, but don't expect me to cry over it." The day of the memorial arrived, and Harbor House buzzed with activity. Ethan had transformed the main hall into a tribute to their mom, filling it with photos, mementos, and artwork created by the Triplets. A slideshow played on a large screen, showing candid snapshots of her laughing, cooking, and playing with her kids. In one corner, Mia set up a display of her sketches inspired by memories of their mom. The room radiated warmth and love. Exactly the kind of atmosphere Ethan hoped to create. As guests began arriving, friends, teachers, neighbors, and even former coworkers of their mom, Ethan stood nervously near the entrance, greeting people and guiding them inside. The Triplets hovered nearby, looking both proud and uneasy. When the ceremony started, Ethan took the stage, his heart pounding. He cleared his throat and began speaking. "Thank you all for being here today," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "This is a day to celebrate an extraordinary woman, a mother, a friend, and a hero. Her name was Claire, and though I didn't know her as well as I should have, I want to honor her memory by sharing her story with all of you." He went on to talk about her strength, her kindness, and the sacrifices she made for her children. As he spoke, tears flowed freely among the audience, including Mia and Noah. Even Lucas wiped his eyes discreetly, though he pretended otherwise. When Ethan finished, he invited others to share their own memories of Claire. One by one, people stood up, recounting stories of her generosity, humor, and unwavering determination. By the end of the evening, the room felt lighter, as if a collective weight had been lifted. Afterward, Ethan noticed Mia sitting alone near the memorial display, staring at the photos. He approached her cautiously, not wanting to intrude. "Hey," he said gently, "how are you holding up?" She glanced up at him, her eyes red from crying but tinged with a faint smile. "It's weird," she admitted. "I miss her so much, but tonight, it feels like she's still here, you know? Like she's watching over us." Ethan nodded, blinking back tears of his own. "I think she is." Later that night, as Ethan walked the Triplets back to their rooms, Lucas suddenly stopped and turned to face him. "Dad," he began, his voice hesitant. It was the first time he'd called Ethan that. I'm sorry for being such a jerk. I know you're trying, and I guess I needed to hear those stories about Mom. It helped." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He pulled Lucas into a tight hug, patting him awkwardly on the back. "I'm sorry too, son," he whispered, "for everything." Over the following weeks, things began to shift. The Triplets started calling Ethan Dad more often, though it still felt strange sometimes. They spent weekends exploring the city together, eating at diners, visiting museums, and even taking road trips to nearby towns. Slowly but surely, they were becoming a family, not the perfect kind, but a real one. Ethan learned to listen more, to be patient, and to cherish the little moments. He also realized that forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table at Harbor House, Mia asked Ethan a question that caught him off guard. "Do you ever think about selling your company and focusing on this place full-time? I mean, you've already done so much for us, and Harbor House feels like home now." Ethan smiled, glancing at each of them in turn. Actually, I've been thinking about that a lot lately, he admitted. Maybe it's time I focus on what really matters. The triplets exchanged surprised looks, then burst into laughter. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly content. He had lost so much, but in finding his children, he had gained something far greater, a second chance.